Do you ever notice how incredible triangle quilts look? You just can't help but stare and look closer and see what's there. Well, you are going to be excited about this one. Wait till you see what I have going today. Hey, Lea Louise here. Have you seen the new Tilda Sunday Brunch collection? Oh my goodness, these fabrics are absolutely gorgeous. I picked them up at QuiltCon, so you may have seen that video already. And I am going to get it started on this. The quilt they had hanging was fantastic, but I can't find a pattern for it. So I had to kind of ad-lib here and figure it out. And with lots of cutting and paper and rulers, I think I've got it because this is the block I want to use. The first thing is I'm going to need to press everything. And I have my fat quarters grouped. There's 20. So I had basically 2 stacks of 7 and a 6. And so I'm just going to set these over here. And I'll show you how I'm going to cut them in a minute. But I do want to press them first. My goal here is to have a 6.5-inch square. And that's what I want to work with to make my block here. Let me put some white paper under this. I have lots of paper after trying to come up with that pattern. Oh my goodness. It took me some doing. So this is my 6.5-inch ruler. And you can see 3, 6.5. And that's why I went with this size. I want to show the fabric. I don't want it cut up too small. I could have easily done this with like a charm square, but this I think just works out so much better. So the original block that I started with was 6.5 inches, and then I cut out the center triangle and then the pieces. But you'll notice when I put my 6.5-inch ruler on here, I'm about 1/8 of an inch shy on this side. So I bumped my pieces up a little bit. This is the piece that goes in the middle, and all my notes and arrows, so I know what I'm doing. And then I went ahead and added a little bit extra on this width. So I'm going to probably do a pattern on this because I couldn't really find a pattern out there for this block without buying those $20 to $35 templates, rulers that are set to just automatically do the measuring. And they're great, but it's not like I do this all the time, and I don't need one more that I want to have to shuffle around and find when I need it. I already have some diamond and other triangle rulers, and I don't even know where they are. So that's where I'm at. That's where I am, and that's why I'm doing this. And if you want to use the ruler, it's great and easy. There's a ton of videos on it on how to use the ruler. But I'm calling this a triangle in a square, and that's what I looked it up as. But you'll also see it as a V block. But again, that's also with the templates. So you decide what works for you, and that's the long of that. So let me go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is press my fabric. And you can see it's very simple, just 2 seams, and that's it, and it's done. So the big thing is going to get them cut. I'm going to make a quilt that'll be 10 by 10 of these blocks. So that'll roughly be 60 inches square. And depending on how that all turns out, I may take it a little bigger. And it depends on time. I want to get this video out, so I'll get started on it. And it may start out as a little quilt that I'll show you and then expand later. That's always fun. Okay, so let's get going. I am so excited to finally get started on this. I have my fabrics all pressed and ready to go. I've modified and made a few changes to my template so I know the sizes are going to work. Actually, I've bumped them up a little bit bigger, so I'd rather have more trimming than having them come up short. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how this works. I am going to cut a strip from my fabric that's 6 3/4 inch high. Now I've got this set out so it's 18 by 22 in this directions. So we have what? I've got this down below because I'll trim this off. I want to get everything straight. Actually, you know what? Let's trim this while we're at it, just so. And I'm going to add a little extra because I'm getting ready to do my my rope bowls and wrapping, and I need some strips of fabric for that. So I've been saving all my strips because they're going to be perfect. Okay, that right there. 6 3/4. No, 7. What did I say? 6 3/4. That's the one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3/4. And we're going to go here and here. And notice I have my little notes there so I don't forget what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pattern for this, but I'm going to write it with all those notes so everybody knows exactly how I did it and how to replicate it, because there were a few points of confusion for me, to say the least. I just wanted to let you know I did increase the size of that pattern. I knew I needed more for triangles, but I thought I could squeeze it in, but I didn't. They came out too small. The first group anyways. Luckily there weren't too many. The rest of them all are looking really beautiful, and they come right to size. But what I want to show you is I don't want to waste these. So I've come up with a few little techniques to stretch them out larger. A number of these were about 1/8, not quite 1/4 of an inch short. And that would have really messed up the pattern, and the seam allowances would have been too narrow. So what I did is I had some varying size scraps of pieces when I cut my fabric, and I just added strips to the bottom. And you can see on these that after I trim it, it's about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to sew with 1/4 inch, so that's not going to be noticeable. And in most of these cases, I think I had the same fabric, yeah. So that all worked out really well. And I can add these to my quilt now, so I'm just about finished. But keep watching, there's more to see. Those little tweaks in the pattern have made this fit perfectly. Actually, here, let me put some white paper. It's hard to see these against that green. So the first thing I do is I take this right triangle, my rectangle triangle, and I sew it on the side. Now, it's very easy to get mixed up and try to put this shorter end here. If it doesn't fit, just turn it around. That means you've got it the wrong way. And again, remember, we have right and left, so that's something to keep in mind. But you just want to put your points together at the top, so 1/4 inch all the way down. And I've cut most of the dog ear off in the way the pattern is cut on that strip of fabric, so there shouldn't be too much to trim. Now, once this is done, I will press this out, and I'm going to show you that one right here. So this one is pressed out. You can see the points are lined up there, and the fabric is right down to the edge here, so we've got a nice block. And here's the trick for me, whoops, I'm dropping everything, is I want this to be 6 1/2 inches, and I want this middle to be at 3 1/4. So here's 3 1/4, and once I get the other piece in, that's going to be my middle, because this measures, let's see, it's going to be, my finished size is going to be 6 1/2. So 3 1/4 is where I want it to fit. And look at this, that little extra bit, there's maybe a 1/16 of an inch that needs to be trimmed, but that's it. So this size is going to work out perfectly. Now what I'm going to do is add the second one, and I'll do exactly the same thing, where I put this point right on top of that point, and I sew. Now remember, these are all bias seams. Now, it's not a bad idea to put a pin in the middle before you start sewing. And the reason I say that is as you're going one way or the other, you know, if you're at this end or this end, you may be pulling, and you may find sometimes the fabric will even start to bow or pull itself in. And that's just the way the threads are responding to being cut, and being on the bias, they tend to be a little more easily moved because it's not that tight 90-degree angle. They're at this slant, and so they can stretch easier. And with that being said, we just need to work around it. It's easily done as long as you don't pull on it. It's not hard. You just want to initially take your time and get the feel of it. put a middle in the center here. So then as you're sewing, you can come down, and you can do it from either side. There's no right or wrong, but I'm just showing here because we have this seam that comes over from the first one we sewed, and now we're going to come across this way. And we'll come all the way down, and we just want this fabric to line up. And sometimes, your fabrics will do this in the middle, and just that's where the pin comes in. It's going to hold everything in place. And my last recommendation, don't take large seams. Keep it at 1/4 inch, or what I'm doing is a scant 1/4 inch. That means it's 1 or 2 threads narrower than a 1/4 inch. And simply because we have this fold. Now, if you've ever looked at a fold in your fabric, you see how it elevates above. It doesn't lay completely flat. There's just that little bit of lip, and you can feel it. And that's probably 1 or 2 threads worth. So if you're taking larger seams, then this becomes narrower, and that's where your block is going to become smaller than what you need. But fortunately, this quilt goes together in strips, and because it's so busy, it's incredibly forgiving. And I'm going to take advantage of that myself, I know. So I'm going to go ahead and get a bunch of blocks done. Actually, you know what? I have some I need to show you. I worked on these last night to make sure that the pattern is actually going to work. And it does, and it's so exciting. But look at how pretty these are. So just, jazz them up and mix them up. So because I'm having 4 individual piles of each fabric. So I have 7 fabrics, and I'm going to cut the pattern 4 times. I take one of the stacks, and I do them all with the same color within the group. Then I'll take another one, and I'll mix one of the others, because there's basically three sets. There's the pink, there's the blues, and then there's sort of the golds. And I want to mix them up, but I also want to have some that are all within that same group of fabrics. And when I get this done, I'll show you what I mean when I've got all the fabrics laid out. I'm so excited. These are beautiful. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. You are going to love this. Even if you get this fabric and you make something else with it, the colors are just so beautiful, and they go together so well. And of course, I love florals, and I love springtime. And you know what? As a kid, Sunday brunch was always my favorite. So this is my perfect fabric collection for spring. Okay, let me get some sewing done, and I'm going to show you how fast this quilt can go together. I do want to show you how I'm doing this, and I have found it easiest to start sewing this way. So I have my piece, my side piece on top of the triangle, but I'm sewing from the triangle side and going up. And that works really well because this is the narrowest part, and this is the part that's going to want to wiggle on you. So you get that down in place and you sew like that. And that worked really well. And then just chain piece. And then once your chain piecing is finished and you press these, you're going to bring them over and add some color. And I'll probably, yeah, there we go. So this is what I'll add to these next. So I'll set those aside. But I did the same thing here and with the chain stitching. And it makes it fast, like I said, because it sews really quickly. And you can see how I just sew down the side. Now, whether you start, depending on which side you're doing, if you're doing this side, the second side, you're going to start this way. And if you're going on this side, you'll go this way. But I definitely find it much easier starting down here. Definitely align your points, put a pin in the middle, and start here, because this is where I was having trouble with my fabric wanting to shift. And so now these are ready to go. We'll get them pressed and check out. I have these 2 finished, but I wanted to show you how to trim them. And actually, let me get that paper again. The darker fabric on a dark mat is tough to see. Okay, here we are. And The one thing you want to make sure is that you have a 1/4 inch up here. And that 1/4 inch seam will be important when you're joining your rows together. The other thing is these should come down to almost nothing. Can't quite see that, but you see where there's not much of the side fabric down here. So what will happen is when we take this 1/4 inch seam and this 1/4 inch seam, then that line is going to join right into the seam. But we've got a lot of forgiveness there. So what we'll do is turn it this way. So I have a 6½ inch square, and I want this point right there, that 3 1/4, to line up right here with that point. So I'm going to put my 3 1/4 there, and I'm going to go as far to the top as I can in order to maintain that seam allowance. And I just make sure everything is straight. There we go on this side. And this side, I'm going to trim. There's hardly anything anywhere except this bottom spot right here. So I'll trim that. And I will go ahead and just knock off these little pieces on each end. Whoops, I forgot I have paper. Going, oh no, what did I cut through? And oh well. So now it's nice and square and it's ready to go. And these are wonderful. They go together quick. You're going to love this. So get your fabric together. You're going to want to make this one. I wanted to give you a quick peek of how these blocks are going to go together. And you see they join up down at the bottom, but mine are not perfect, and I'm okay with that. They're going to be relatively close, and once I get that 1/4 inch seam on there, it's going to be pretty negligible. Fun word, isn't it? It's just fun to say. I'd hate to have to try and spell it. So what I want to show you is this is the way the pattern is set to be sewn. Now, you can come with the next one like this, or you can come with the next one like this, so your triangles are opposite. But look at what you miss out on. See how these two come together, and you get another triangle going in the opposite direction, and they're split between two different fabrics. I love that, as opposed to this angle. Now, if you did it this way, you could do a diagonal across the quilt, but you know what? After all these triangles, I'm not going for diagonals. I'm going to be happy to get these together in a straight row. But with that being said, I'm loving this, and I want to make as many blocks as possible. And I went through the fabrics that I had left over, and you remember I had some, strips like this that I had set aside, and I thought, okay, maybe I can piece some of those together. But they weren't tall enough to get the triangle. So instead, I took these two pieces, cut them out, and made one of those. Did you see that? So these two side triangles come together, and now I'm making that. So when we look here, look at that. So the triangle, I can use more, what do I want to say? I can use smaller pieces of fabric and still get my triangles and piece them. And I think that's going to be wonderful, because this is going to be pieced throughout the quilt. So the whole thing's going to look like that. And having a few more in this direction versus that, I think it's just going to add such a great scrappy look to it. I love it. Now, another thing, remember on these, I added that extra piece on the bottom. I wanted to show you I was running out of a few. Well, actually, you know what these are? These are the first triangles, or the first rectangles that I cut at an angle, and they were too short. So I added extra fabric to them. So see, I've got, whoops, that flipped over. But I have no problem. I can't even talk. I have no problem, except talking, to go ahead and piece my blocks together. And I want to show you, let's see, I had some, here we go, some kind of funny ones that, I have blocks pieced in different different direction angles. Wow, that's durangles. Okay, hang in with me. We're getting there. This quilt has really kept me on my toes. But see, it's not that noticeable when the quilt is all put together. And at least I'm not going to notice it. Shoot, I can't even say it. Never mind. Look at it. And the last thing is there were a couple more. I needed to get to the end. So this one was good. This one I needed to add a little more on the corner, so I've got that there. And now I can bring my bring my pattern in this way, and I can get that corner. And same with this one. I needed to make it longer, so I've got that all set. So piece it, put it together, and use what you have. Instead of putting all the extra medium-sized pieces, put them to good use. And see, I have this one sewn together. I can do something fun with that, and then save the other stuff that's left over and use that in a scrap quilt, because I'd rather make this one larger and use up these pieces as I can. And as scrappy as this looks, even though it's not intended to be a scrappy quilt, but with 20 different fabrics, there's a lot going on. And I think it's turning out great. I love it. But I just wanted to keep you abreast of this, since there have been so many modifications along the way and lots of learning curves. Okay, now I'm going to get my I did it again. Now I'm going to get my quilt put together, and I'm going to take a few deep breaths so I can talk without stumbling. All right, y'all. I'll see you in a few. Wow, was this ever a labor of love? I love how it turned out. It's so pretty. These colors are gorgeous together. And the triangles, the way they mix and cross over in the seams is just wonderful. Now, I talked about doing a pattern, but I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to finalize these measurements and make another quilt or two just to make sure we're on track, because there were a few iffy points here along the way, as you remember, but it is so pretty. And in the meantime, if you're anxious to do one, go ahead and grab yourself those templates. They may make it a lot easier, but I am determined to figure this out. I appreciate you following along today and watching this creation come to fruition. It was such a project, and I really had a lot of fun. Thanks a lot. It's great having you here. As always, it's such a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your week.